read me the question and I'll answer it.
All
So
right. So, one of the things I've observed through comments and people asking me is there seems to be a lot of hype around sourcing cars through the Japanese car auctions. But
sure.
is it the best way to search for a specific car, or would you recommend other places as well, just to
Well,
cover more
I mean,
bases?
yeah, I mean the Japanese auction does a really good job, or of being able to. It's basically the main source of getting cars in Japan, and they. I don't want to say a really good job. It's probably they do a pretty good job of describing cars and going through and checking stuff and grading them. But it's not the be all end all. And the problem is, of course, is that if you think that a grade four, grade five car is always the best car and an R car is the worst car, then you're wrong because you haven't seen as many of them up close as I have. So, the problem is that some people live and die by the auction stuff. And there's some abnormalities, in some of the cars and some abnormalities in some of the things. But the the truth is that it's not the only thing. It is a good thing, but it's not the only thing when it comes down to grading a car. So now you have some other options. Obviously, there's car dealers and things like that over there. But you're always best if you're going to be buying a car from auction. You're best to have somebody locally on the ground have a look at the car for you.
That makes
You know,
sense.
especially if you're paying any kinds of real money for it or anything.
Right.
Because you may run into something that was not either on the sheet or they graded it weird or something like that, where you can have, again, you can have a car that's an R car and it could be an R car because they put a body kit on it or something, or, somebody painted it or something like that. Now, generally speaking, it's had an accident, but you know, we're dealing with 25 and 30-year-old jet cars from Japan. I mean, honestly, just about everything's probably hit something at one point, and everything has probably had some paint at some point. So, um,
Sure.
just and for all kinds of different reasons, because again, these are 25 or 30-year-old cars. So,
Right.
um, some people put a little too much weight into it. So, and just kind of again live and die by those numbers. So.
Okay. If someone were to come to you specifically or your company specifically and say, "I would like to get," and this is what I have here, a 1998 25 GT 34, what would the process be of sourcing the car and what would you need from the customer to kind of narrow down the search? Like,
Sure, sure. So, I mean, on that particular car, actually, the first thing that I did is look up how many they made because occasionally people ask for some stuff and there's like 12 of them made. And, you have to be realistic with somebody and say, look, honestly, I'm not going to be able to find exactly what you want. I wrote down how many, that was part of my notes. I think there was about 660 GT, the turbo versions of those cars. And I think there was 112 of the non-turbo version of them because you wrote GT and
yeah,
so again, it depends. You have to be clear with what the customer wants. So, because they may not know, they may not even understand exactly what they want and why they want it. So,
sure.
somebody may be good with an automatic and somebody may not be. And then obviously, it's relatively popular to, what I call like sex change on the cars from auto to manual. So we do see that done on cars. So we need to know like again what somebody's really looking for, what they actually want.
Right.
So again, and when you're looking at that car, about 660 cars made, almost 25 years ago. You're definitely, as you get narrower and narrower and narrower down, your choices on car starts to be like, hey, if you say I want this car and it has to have 30,000 kilometers and I want to pay $10,000. I'm gonna be like, I don't waste my time. I mean, because we're not going to find that car. We're not going to find it for that money. We're not going to find that car for in that mileage for that money. It's just, you're unrealistic with what you want. If you become realistic, then we can talk. Other than that, it's just not something we're going to do.
Okay.
And so, again, they have to have a realistic budget. They have to have realistic, ideas and goals and all that. And again, everybody, would you take a different color? you want not red? Do you want, would white be okay? Or if it has to be red, then I'm going to tell you like, okay, I can probably start to search, or we can do auction stuff. We can search individually. But if that's exactly what you want, you're going to have to pay whatever prices that I'm able to find it for.
Right. Sure.
So, and again, that all, that all changes. That all is, variable basically, right? So,
Yeah. Because I use I think two or three different sites to be able to look at the auctions because they all have like different pieces of data on them. And
yep,
but there always seems to be like the ability to search basically not so much by model but also just by chassis code.
yep,
Um, and so if someone just said, I would like, I don't know the chassis code for like an S14 or an S15, but like if I
that's
want,
it.
is the chassis code? Uh,
S14, S15, yeah, you can. That's what it is. That's the chassis code.
oh,
So,
because I just expected it to be a little longer for some reason.
nope. No, and
Uh,
that's it. I mean, those are all, all those cars are. So you got like BNR 32,
yeah.
B BCNR 33, S14, S15, S16, S16. Yeah, that doesn't exist yet. Sorry. Um, but some of the other stuff is JZX 100, JZX 90, all
Yeah.
those kinds of things too. So, JZA 80. Yeah, that's all. That's the chassis code. That's it. I mean, so, and
Okay.
it starts there, and then the rest of the digits are for at least Japanese, for JDM Japanese cars. The build sequence number of whatever the car is. So,
Right.
but getting back to your car, like searching, you said you were searching for cars, you search for a certain
Yeah.
vehicle.
Like you can search for like a chassis code specifically instead,
Yep.
and some codes seem to warrant a lot of results, and then it also includes the different trim levels of that chassis code as well.
Exactly. Yep. Yep. So, well, I mean, that's, again, there's even, when you start to get into the ERs and all those things, some of the customer knowledge of what is available and, engines, transmissions, all those kinds of things, there's more than, if somebody just says R34, well, there's a lot more than just a single R34.
Right.
You've got everything from two doors to four doors to automatics. You've got RB20s, and I mean, you just got so many different varieties. So the customer has to be somewhat educated, because if somebody looks at one of those cars and says, oh, I can get an R34 for 10 grand, well, they're not looking at a GTR. They want a GTR, but they're looking at something else, and
Yeah.
that's not the same price range. So, in the same, if the car is um, a non-turbo or automatic transmission, or it has other problems, and the prices are going to vary, based on that. So,
Yeah. I mean, nowadays, I mean, like 10 years ago, the prices for all these cars are very, very different. So
yeah,
now,
well, yeah, I mean, it's desirability, and
yeah,
people of a certain age, and basically, every year cars are getting wrecked, cars, go overseas, and cars become part of a collection that they're just not purchasable out of.
yeah,
So, I mean, there's certain cars that are out there in the world that just not available for sale, and
yeah,
they're in somebody's collection now, and there's the thing is that there are, at least when we're talking about these kinds of cars and these kinds of things, is that you're 127 million people in Japan, and you have 330 million people in the US. And even if obviously you don't even have that many people in the US that are really interested in the cars, you still have a lot of potential buyers for a relatively small number of vehicles.
yeah,
So, and you got to remember, like a lot of these other like pedestrian, plain Jane kind of cars in Japan, they're relatively disposable. They just get rid of them, and so they've either gone overseas, or they just have been crushed. I mean, I mean, where do you think all of these, RB20, RB25, RB26 swaps, and all the stuff that's available, all these engines? I mean, majority of them are from wrecked cars and stuff like
Yeah.
that. So, and when the prices obviously, and again, even it gets back to some of this pricing stuff, but, depending on the cost of something, fixing it versus just, parting it out. And so, I mean, we're starting to reach the point where, you can almost afford to fix anything because, the car's worth so much money versus like, before when the car wasn't necessarily worth that much money, it was better just to part it out. So
Yeah.
it's just shifts. It shifts. All that stuff shifts. So
Have you had more? Well, okay. First half of this question is kind of dumb because I'm pretty sure I know what the answer is. But have you had more
yeah,
interest into Skyline GTRs lately than in the past? Would you say
I
approaching
would say
the
so. Yes, yes. It would definitely. The crazy part about it is, I mean, somebody the like so, obviously deal with a lot of owners and I deal with a lot of groups and forums and all that stuff for years and years and years. And you run into guys that say, "Man, there's 5 in my town" or something like that. And I mean, they live in some small town and they think that that's a thing. And I'm like, well, in my town of 12 million people, I never see any on the road,
right?
and I live in a town of 12 million people here in LA or whatever, however you want to count LA and the surrounding area and all of that stuff. And so, and it's like, obviously, there weren't enough skylines made from the beginning to cover 12 million people, for
Yeah.
everybody to have one. And obviously that's not a realistic thing either. But still, again, I still run into people every single day, even around here. And I've been dealing with these cars here in California for 20 years that tell me that, that's their favorite car in the world, and you can't buy them here in the States every day, you know? It's and so, every single day we're telling people, we're showing people, we're explaining how you can get them and all these other things. And every single day we're talking to basically dozens and dozens of people that are interested in the cars. And so, people, get jobs, they move on, they just they get, they watch a video and decide that that's what they want to do. And or some cars is what they want. And we buy and sell cars. So
Would you say there's been a increase due to the fact that a lot of these cars probably have exited a lot of people's budget range at this point? Would you say there's been more of a increase in interest into the non GTR Skylines?
nope.
Interesting. That's fascinating.
No, actually, opposite. We're actually, the more expensive they are, the more interest we're having.
Really?
Yeah,
It's not what I would expected. That's very fascinating.
yeah, no, and yeah, it's we don't get that much interest in non GTR. I mean, probably, I mean, too, what we do, but we don't get that much interest in non GTR Skylines. But GTRs, yeah, no problem. I mean, cars, we're selling stuff. I don't know what I want to say on video, but let's just say over $300,000 cars. So
Yeah. I've seen a couple Series 1 base GTRs being sold in the Japanese mainland for upwards of 130. So I don't even really want to think about
right.
what the O2 NER models go for.
Yeah, and your midnight purple twos and stuff like that. So,
Yeah.
I mean, again, if you pay attention to some people on the internet, they'll tell you it never happened, and I'm like, well, that's cool. You believe whatever you want to believe. So,
This was an interesting question that someone asked me because I guess it wasn't clear to them as to what 25-year-old vehicles are exempt from.
sure, sure. So when you import a car, there's more than a single government agency to deal with. So the people that control the entry is customs.
Okay.
So customs are the guys who are the police or the gatekeepers or whatever you want to say. So in order for you to import or have a car legally, you have to meet
customs requirements. So they want you to pay tariff, duties, and all that stuff. And obviously that's more like Treasury Department stuff. But again, customs is your gatekeeper. So,
Okay.
you have to pay tariff and stuff on the car. It's 2.5% of the value, and plus processing fees and the rest of the shit. About three, you end up paying about 3.5% of the value of the car. And then you have NHTSA regulations. So actually, let's start with EPA, because EPA is a lot more interesting. So EPA says at 21 years old, a vehicle is EPA exempt in original configuration.
Okay.
So now this is something that screws with most people, because they say, well, what about 25? And I said, I know. But 21, the EPA says original configuration, it's exempt. So, and EPA is also calendar year. They don't do it by date of manufacturer. So a car, it was built in 99, in 2024, it's exempt automatically. But it is not NHTSA exempt. It doesn't become NHTSA exempt until it's 25 years old. So typical government, you have one agency that says 21 is exempt, one agency that says 25 is exempt. And so it doesn't, they don't preempt each other. You have to meet both requirements in order to legally import a car.
Sure.
So, and again, there's some complexities related to that, to registration. People don't understand, like, it's not like a simple answer. It's not, there's not only the single agency, there's actually multiple agencies you have to satisfy. And if you can't satisfy them all, then you don't meet all the requirements. So
Right.
you can't have the car. So anyway, it's all the weirdness. I mean, because somebody says, "Oh, I don't have emissions where I live," or whatever, and it's like, well, it's got nothing to do with emissions. It's got everything to do with, the federal agencies and stuff like that. So
Yeah, because in the comment thread on one of my videos, I can't remember which one it was, obviously pertaining to this topic, they were arguing about whether a car could legally be catless or not. Basically,
well, no, that's the EPA requirement, and tampering with emissions equipment is not allowed by the EPA. I don't care where you live. I don't care if you don't have smog where you live. That doesn't mean anything. The EPA governs everything in the whole entire U.S. If you are in the USA, you're governed by federal regulations. The EPA is a federal agency. Your local regulations are what you call in-use testing. And so if locally they don't do in-use testing, that doesn't exempt you from federal requirements.
right.
And so the biggest thing related to that is that don't perjure yourself. Don't incriminate yourself.
Yeah.
But the problem is that most people don't understand what that means. And they're like, no, man, I can do whatever I want. They're never going to check. And I'm like, you're right. Until you go out and say, this is what I did, or this is what this is what I'm doing, or I took all the cats off my car, blah, blah, blah. And if somebody wants to make an example of you, you just perjured yourself.
Yep.
And it's a $27,000 fine per incident or something like that.
Yeah.
So look up the Diesel brothers, like those guys got busted. They had like a $5 million fine or something like that. And again, there's a bunch of, it's called the Clean Air Act. And so anybody can look up something called the Clean Air Act. And again, this is federal. This is not local. And people don't understand, like, oh, again, I don't have smog. Doesn't matter. What you don't want to do is perjure yourself. Don't perjure yourself. So, the and again, that people just want to prove how badass they are and how much they don't need to pay attention to regulations. So,
And the last kind of main question before, if you want to bring up any other topics, is this is more a quote than a question, but why can't I import a car that's not quite 25 and then just store it in my garage and never drive it?
because the gatekeeper is customs. Because in order to import a car legally into the U.S., you have to fill out what's called an HS7. You have to call out a 3520-1. What exactly you're going to put on that documentation? because the car either needs to meet standards, needs to be over 25, you have to have an exemption. Those are all the things for it.
Right.
So it's like going into a liquor store when you're 18 and saying, I'm going to buy this right now, but I'm not going to consume it until I'm 18. It doesn't work like that.
Right.
You know, sorry, you know, it's 21 to buy liquor, you know, it's 18 to buy cigarettes. This is what it is. So it doesn't matter what, if you tell them what you're going to do, you know, what all that really matters is what, you know, what the regulations say. So,
Yeah.
you know, and the regulations say no. So,
Okay. Are there any other things you want to bring up that you think people should know before we move on to the next?
about importation,
Yeah.
you know, again, it's really complicated. It's complicated and it's difficult, and you have a whole bunch of different government agencies that all tell you different things, and none of them necessarily know each other's regulations, and that's a problem. So,
Okay. I always tell people that it's good to kind of, if you are importing a car and it is over 25, to have someone that knows the processes be there with them at the very least, so that they can dot all the I's and cross all the T's, because you don't want something to go wrong.
yeah, I mean, and it's really easy to go wrong. I mean, I think yesterday I was trying to help a guy who's trying to do some stuff in California with a car, and you know, and he's going through talking about all the frustrations. He sold a car like 8 months ago, and dealing with dealing with the California, and you know, not able to get the car titled here. And you know, if he would have talked to me 8 months ago, I would have got his problem handled. But you know, or if I would have imported the car for him, I would have handled it for him. But instead, he goes around, and you know, a lot of people think they know what they're doing. And again, some people are like, "Well, my time's free," and he's, "Well, okay, if you assume your time is free, that's fine. But you know, this is what I do, and if you pay me money, then I can fix it." So, but you know, this is what I do. So,
Yeah.
you know, I can tell you, I can save you 8 months of messing around. You know, and so. And again, everybody, you know, especially younger people, obviously, right? They're like, "Oh, I can do this or I can do that," and it's like, you know, fine, but
All right.